Have you ever found yourself standing alone, feeling as though life has quietly shifted you away from familiar people, places, and routines? This isolation might seem like rejection or abandonment, but what if it's part of a greater divine plan? For the chosen ones of God, isolation is never accidental. It is purposeful, intentional, and transformative. It is not a sign of rejection, but a profound indication that God is working in your life, shaping you for something far greater than you can imagine. When God isolates His chosen ones, it is not to harm them, but to prepare them. Just as a craftsman removes distractions to focus on perfecting his masterpiece, God removes the noise of the world so that He can mold His beloved into the vessel they are destined to become. Isolation is a sacred space where God's voice becomes clearer, His purpose sharper, and His protection unwavering. If you've ever felt hidden, forgotten, or invisible, stay with us as we uncover the 7 divine reasons why God isolates His chosen. Subscribe now to join this journey of faith, reflection, and transformation, and discover how your isolation is a sign of His remarkable plan for you. 1. God's isolation is for protection. One of the most profound reasons why God isolates His chosen ones is for protection. In His infinite wisdom, God sees beyond what we can perceive. While we may feel hurt or confused when relationships end, opportunities close, or environments shift, God's purpose is often to shield us from dangers we cannot see. His isolation is not rejection, it's divine protection. Think of a shepherd who carefully separates his sheep from areas where wolves might lurk. Just as the shepherd's actions are motivated by care, so is God's decision to isolate His chosen ones. Sometimes the people we desire to stay connected with, the groups we wish to belong to, or the places we long to remain in, are not aligned with God's purpose for our lives. They may appear good on the surface, but carry hidden threats to our spiritual well-being. Take Joseph's story as an example. Betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, he must have felt abandoned and isolated. Yet this separation was God's way of protecting Joseph from the toxic dynamics of his family and positioning him for something greater. What appeared as misfortune was God safeguarding Joseph's destiny, ensuring he was placed where his gifts could be fully realized. Similarly, God's protection often removes us from environments filled with negativity, envy, or harm. These dangers are not always obvious. They can be disguised as friendships, opportunities, or even success. Without God's intervention, we might unknowingly step into situations that compromise our faith or spiritual growth. In such moments, isolation serves as a sanctuary, a place where we are hidden from harm, both seen and unseen. Consider the words of Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Isolation is often that shelter. When God closes a door or distances us from certain relationships, He is creating a barrier between us and what could harm our soul. It may feel like a loss, but it's an act of love and foresight. Elijah's story offers another powerful example. After his confrontation with the prophets of Baal, Elijah fled into the wilderness, feeling overwhelmed and alone. But in that place of isolation, God provided for him, sending an angel to deliver food and water. God's protection wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. By removing Elijah from danger, He gave him the strength to continue his mission. As painful as isolation may seem, It's vital to trust that God is working for your good. The loneliness you feel is not permanent. It's a shield of divine love. When God pulls you away from people, places, or situations, it's often to keep your heart pure, your faith strong, and your focus aligned with His will. So when you feel the sting of separation, remember this: God isolates His chosen ones not to punish them, but to protect them. Trust His plan, for His protection is the foundation upon which He builds your greater purpose. 2. Isolation as a period of preparation. When God isolates His chosen ones, it is often to prepare them for a divine purpose. This period of solitude is not a time of abandonment, but a sacred season of transformation. Just as a potter places a vessel on the wheel to mold and refine it, God uses isolation to shape His chosen for the mission He has ordained for their lives. While it may feel lonely, this time is essential for spiritual growth and alignment with His purpose. The story of David is a powerful example of how isolation is a tool of preparation. After being anointed as king, David did not ascend to the throne immediately. Instead, he entered a long season of trials and solitude. He fled from Saul, lived in caves, and led a group of outcasts. This isolation was not punishment, but preparation. God used this time to teach David patience, humility, and reliance on His guidance. David learned to lead, not through power or privilege, but through faith and servanthood. By the time he became king, David was equipped with the wisdom and resilience needed to fulfill his divine calling. In the same way, God isolates modern believers to prepare them for what lies ahead. Often, we long for quick results, immediate recognition, or instant success. But God's timing is perfect, and His preparation is thorough. During isolation, He works behind the scenes, removing impurities, strengthening character, and planting seeds of wisdom and purpose. This is not a passive process. It requires trust, patience, and surrender. Consider the metaphor of a seed buried in the soil. To the outside world, it may seem hidden, forgotten, or insignificant. Yet beneath the surface, the seed is undergoing a transformation, growing roots and gathering strength. Similarly, isolation is a time when God grows our spiritual roots, ensuring we are grounded and ready to withstand the storms that may come with our calling. For modern believers, this preparation often means stepping away from distractions. Social connections, ambitions, and even comforts may be stripped away, leaving us with only God. It is in this space of solitude that we come to know Him deeply and learn to hear His voice clearly. Isolation teaches us to trust His promises, even when the path ahead is unclear. Jesus Himself exemplified this truth. Before beginning His public ministry, He spent 40 days in the wilderness. This time of fasting and prayer was not only a test of His faith, but also a preparation for the monumental mission that lay ahead. The same God who prepared David and Jesus is preparing you during your season of isolation. Trust that this period is not wasted. God is refining you, equipping you with the patience, resilience, and wisdom needed to walk boldly into the purpose He has designed for your life. When the time comes for your elevation, you will emerge not only ready but transformed, a vessel fully prepared to fulfill His will. 3. The testing of faith and resilience. Isolation is one of God's most effective tools for testing and strengthening the faith of His chosen. When the noise of the world fades and familiar comforts are stripped away, we are left with one crucial question: will we trust God, even in the silence? This season of testing is not meant to break us, but to refine us, fortify our resilience, and deepen our reliance on Him. Faith is easy when life is smooth, but true faith is proven in the fire of challenges. Isolation often feels like abandonment, but it is a divine setup for growth. Consider the story of Job, a man who faced profound isolation and loss. Stripped of his wealth, health, and even the support of his friends, Job's faith was put to the ultimate test. In his solitude, Job clung to God, declaring, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him." Job 13:15. His resilience was not born of comfort, but of unwavering trust in God's sovereignty, even when he couldn't understand His plan. For modern believers, isolation can feel like a wilderness. You may find yourself cut off from relationships, opportunities, or even the familiar sense of God's presence. Yet it is in this wilderness that faith is strengthened. Like muscles that grow stronger through resistance, our faith grows through the challenges of uncertainty, waiting, and perseverance. Isolation forces us to confront our doubts, lay aside self-reliance, and place our trust fully in God. The story of the Israelites wandering in the desert is another powerful illustration. Their 40 years of isolation were not just a journey to the promised land, but a test of their faith and obedience. God used that time to teach them dependence on His provision, as He supplied manna daily and guided them with a cloud by day and fire by night. Their resilience grew not through abundance, but through reliance on Him for every need. In our own lives, periods of isolation often come before significant breakthroughs. These seasons teach us to wait on God's timing and trust that His plan is perfect even when it seems delayed. Faith forged in isolation is resilient faith, capable of withstanding trials and doubts that might otherwise shake it. If you are in a season of isolation, know that God is not distant. He is testing and strengthening you, preparing you for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Trust Him in the silence, and you will emerge with a faith that is unshakable, resilient, and deeply rooted in His promises. 4. Isolation for empowerment and transformation. Isolation is not merely a time of waiting. It is a crucible for empowerment and transformation. In solitude, God works deeply within His chosen ones, revealing hidden strengths, imparting wisdom, and fostering spiritual growth that prepares them for the mission ahead. Though the process may feel lonely, it is within this silence that believers often find their truest selves and their greatest connection to God. When God isolates you, He removes distractions that cloud your understanding of His will. Without the noise of the world, you begin to hear His voice more clearly and discern the lessons He is teaching you. This clarity is transformative, enabling you to recognize the potential within yourself that might have remained hidden amidst the busyness of life. Isolation strips away the superficial and reveals the eternal. Take the story of Moses. After fleeing Egypt, Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness as a shepherd. During this time of solitude, God transformed him from a man of impulsive action into a leader of patience and wisdom. Moses learned humility and reliance on God, lessons that were essential for his role in leading the Israelites out of bondage. His time in isolation empowered him to confront Pharaoh and guide an entire nation, not through his own strength, but through the strength imparted by God. For modern believers, isolation serves a similar purpose. It is often in the quiet, hidden moments that we discover abilities we didn't know we possessed. God uses solitude to refine our character, sharpen our focus, and deepen our understanding of His Word. The lessons learned in isolation, patience, resilience, and unwavering trust, are essential for the work He has prepared for us. David's time in the caves, hiding from Saul, was another period of empowerment. Surrounded by outcasts, David was forced to lead and inspire those who would later become his mighty men. Isolation didn't weaken him. It prepared him to be the king God had anointed him to be. It was in solitude that David's courage, leadership, and reliance on God were forged. When you find yourself in isolation, remember that God is empowering you. He is equipping you with the wisdom, strength, and spiritual depth needed to fulfill your purpose. This transformation is not immediate, but it is profound. Trust that the time you spend in solitude is a divine investment in your future. Through isolation, God molds you into a vessel of His power and grace, ready to impact the world in ways you never imagined. Your transformation is not just for your benefit, but for His glory. Embrace this time as an opportunity to grow, and trust that God is preparing you for something extraordinary. 5. God hides His chosen before elevation. Before God elevates His chosen ones, He often hides them. This period of concealment may feel like obscurity or insignificance, but it is a deliberate act of preparation for a greater revelation. God uses this time to mold, refine, and position His chosen for the work He has planned. When the time for elevation comes, His chosen ones are revealed in such a way that His hand is unmistakable in their lives. The story of Joseph is a striking example of this divine pattern. As a young man, Joseph received dreams from God that foretold his future elevation. However, his journey to fulfillment was far from immediate. Instead of being elevated, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned. For years he lived in isolation and obscurity, hidden from the world. Yet, even in these challenging circumstances, God's hand was upon him. Joseph's concealment was not a sign of rejection, but of preparation. During his time in slavery and imprisonment, Joseph's character was being refined. He learned humility, patience, and leadership, qualities that would be essential for the role God had planned for him. Each step of his hidden journey positioned him closer to his destiny. When the time was right, God elevated Joseph to the position of governor of Egypt, a role that saved countless lives during a famine. His years of being hidden were the foundation for his years of being revealed. This process of hiding before elevation is not unique to Joseph. It is a recurring theme in the Bible. Moses was hidden in the desert for 40 years before God called him to lead the Israelites. David spent years in caves before ascending to the throne. Even Jesus lived in relative obscurity for 30 years before beginning his public ministry. God's pattern is clear. He hides His chosen ones to prepare them for their purpose. For modern believers, the experience of being hidden can feel discouraging. It may seem as though your gifts are overlooked, your efforts unnoticed, and your potential unfulfilled. But just as Joseph's time in prison was not the end of his story, your hidden season is not the end of yours. God is working behind the scenes, shaping you into the person you need to be for the calling He has placed on your life. This time of concealment is also a time of protection. Before revealing His chosen ones, God ensures that they are spiritually, emotionally, and mentally prepared for the challenges that come with elevation. He shields them from unnecessary distractions and battles, ensuring they are equipped to handle their new responsibilities with grace and faith. When God hides His chosen ones, it is always with a purpose. The hiding is temporary, but the impact of the elevation is eternal. Trust the process, for when God decides to reveal you, no force can stop His plan. Like Joseph, your time in the shadows will make your time in the light all the more significant, as it will clearly demonstrate the faithfulness and power of God. 6. Spiritual renewal and intimacy with God. Isolation is often the setting where the deepest spiritual renewal takes place. It is in solitude, free from the noise and distractions of the world, that we can experience a profound intimacy with God. This sacred time is not about being abandoned, but about being drawn closer to the One who desires to work within us, transforming our hearts and renewing our spirits. The story of Elijah beautifully illustrates this truth. After his dramatic confrontation with the prophets of Baal, Elijah fled into the wilderness, overwhelmed and discouraged. In his solitude, he felt isolated and despondent, crying out to God in despair. Yet it was in this wilderness, far from the chaos of his enemies and the demands of his calling, that Elijah encountered God in a deeply personal way. God met Elijah in his moment of solitude, not with grand displays of power, but with a gentle whisper. This quiet moment revealed the closeness of God's presence and His understanding of Elijah's pain and exhaustion. Through this encounter, Elijah was renewed in spirit, equipped to continue his mission, and reminded that God was in control. His time alone was not wasted. It was a necessary pause for spiritual restoration. For modern believers, isolation can serve a similar purpose. In the busyness of life, it's easy to lose sight of God's presence. When we are isolated, distractions are removed, and the stillness invites us to draw nearer to Him. This is a time to pour out our hearts in prayer, seek His word with undivided attention, and listen for His voice. It is a space for healing, clarity, and the renewing of our faith. Spiritual renewal in isolation also involves a realignment of priorities. As we spend time with God, He reveals what truly matters and helps us let go of what does not. It is a time of surrender, where we exchange our fears and burdens for His peace and guidance. The intimacy we cultivate with Him during this season strengthens us for the road ahead. Isolation is not a punishment, but an invitation to deeper fellowship with God. Like Elijah, we are reminded in the quiet moments that God is near, renewing our strength and preparing us for the journey He has planned. In His presence, we find the renewal and intimacy our souls long for, transforming our solitude into a sanctuary of divine connection. 7. The promise of revelation and fulfillment. For those who endure seasons of isolation, there is a divine promise. God will reveal His chosen ones at the perfect time. Isolation is not the final chapter. It is the prelude to a powerful unveiling. When the time of preparation, refinement, and spiritual growth is complete, God brings His chosen ones into the light, fulfilling His purpose in a way that magnifies His glory and demonstrates His faithfulness. The life of Jesus offers a profound example of this truth. Before His public ministry began, Jesus spent 30 years in relative obscurity, living a quiet life as a carpenter. This time was not wasted. It was a season of preparation. Then, after 40 days of fasting and isolation in the wilderness, Jesus emerged empowered by the Holy Spirit, ready to begin his ministry. When the time came for his revelation, it was undeniable. His teachings, miracles, and ultimate sacrifice revealed God's plan for humanity's salvation. Similarly, the Apostle Paul experienced a season of isolation before stepping into his calling. After his dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus, Paul withdrew to Arabia for 3 years. This period of solitude allowed him to deepen his understanding of the gospel and prepare for his mission of spreading the word to the Gentiles. When God revealed Paul to the world, he became one of the most influential figures in the history of Christianity, fulfilling his divine purpose with boldness and conviction. For modern believers, the promise of revelation and fulfillment is just as certain. God does not isolate his chosen ones without a purpose. The time of being hidden is a time of preparation, and when the moment arrives, his plan for you will unfold in ways that leave no doubt it was orchestrated by his hand. Your gifts, calling, and mission will be revealed at the right time, and nothing can hinder God's will. The key is trusting his timing. The waiting may feel long, but it is never wasted. Every moment of isolation serves to prepare you for the day of revelation. When God chooses to elevate and reveal you, it will be in a way that glorifies him and fulfills his promises to you. Hold fast to his word, for the God who calls you is faithful. Your season of revelation is coming, and it will reflect the fulfillment of his perfect plan in your life. Trust the process and embrace your calling. As we close, let this truth settle in your heart. Isolation is not the end of your journey, but the beginning of a divine transformation. Every moment of solitude, every trial, and every delay is a step in God's greater plan for your life. He is working in the unseen, shaping you for a purpose that will bring glory to his name and fulfillment to your soul. You are chosen, and being chosen means being set apart. Trust the process, even when it feels uncertain. Remember that God's timing is perfect, and his promises never fail. What he has begun in you, he will bring to completion. The isolation you experience now is preparing you for the revelation and elevation he has planned for you. Take heart and embrace your calling with faith. Lean into the season of preparation, knowing that God is with you every step of the way. Let his word be your guide, his promises your anchor, and his presence your comfort. If this message has resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and share this video with others who may need encouragement. Together, let's grow in faith, trust in God's plan, and walk boldly into the purpose he has set before us. The best is yet to come.